Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Today's Lyme Time episode is going to be focusing on hyperthermia. I know you all have a lot of questions about it, and I'm so excited to announce my special guest, McKeon. And Michelle is an integrative medicine nutritionist who specializes in environmental toxins, tick-borne infections, GI issues, and inflammatory conditions. Michelle has expertise in testing for, diagnosing, and treating mold mycotoxins, genetic methylation conditions, heavy metals, pathogenic infections, cell membrane injury, which is a big topic right now, MCAS, hyperthermia treatment, building biology, limbic system function, candida, diet, and gut flora through her nutrition practice, the Lyme specialist. Michelle is also a hyperthermia consultant where she partners with hospitals that offer hyperthermia treatment to patients with Lyme disease and cancer. She works as a liaison in helping with any scheduling needs and holding your hand through the entire treatment process. Michelle has authored 2 books, writes articles for health magazines, often interviews on podcasts, other media, and at events to share her own personal story of overcoming Lyme and making a career as a Lyme specialist through nutrition and hyperthermic therapies. Her dynamic combination of personal, professional, and educational experiences has created a foundation to effectively support people in becoming their optimal selves, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, which I love. She has received a master's degree in human nutrition from the University of Bridgeport. And then from there, Michelle became a board certified nutrition specialist, licensed dietitian nutritionist, and certified mold specialist. So that's a mouthful. Thank you for joining us, Michelle. Welcome to Lyme Time.
Thank you. I love being here. I'm excited for the podcast.
I'm excited too. So let's just jump right in. First and foremost, you are a Lyme warrior, and I want to hear more about your story before you became interested in all the health issues that you became interested in.
Sure. So I was bit when I was 18. Prior to being bit, I was always healthy growing up, really didn't have a lot of health issues. And I was working at Fire Island. It was a summer job, working in an ice cream parlor. So it was like the beach plus ice cream, what could be better? And then all of a sudden I got bit by a tick and my entire world turned upside down. I had pretty severe neurological symptoms. It was full-blown Lyme encephalitis. Not only did the tick that bit me transmit Lyme disease, it also transmitted Bartonella, Powassan virus, Mycoplasma pneumonia. There was a bunch of different co-infections that it infected me with. And so it was pretty brutal in the beginning. And it also took many, many years to get diagnosed, which was unfortunate because we kept on asking about Lyme because Fire Island is kind of like the Lyme capital.
Yes.
And we got a lot of Lyme tests and everything came out negative. So my symptoms really kind of went through flare-ups while I was in college, and then it would kind of dissipate a little bit. I'd start feeling a little bit better. I was diagnosed with like cervical dystonia, a movement disorder, so symptoms with my neck. I was also diagnosed with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, a bunch of different things that really didn't ever get to the root cause until many years later when I knew to go to a Lyme specialist and get the correct testing done. So that was kind of how my journey began. And it was very, very confusing at first, which I'm sure for people that are listening and have dealt with Lyme disease, it's similar to their story because it's a very misunderstood disease. Testing is oftentimes inaccurate if you're not getting testing done from the right laboratory. And so unfortunately, you go many, many years without being diagnosed, you get sicker, and then you're at the point where it's like, okay, I can't function. What do I do? And that's where I was at about 4.5 years after being bit.
Wow. And
Yeah.
you saw the tick actually? You remember the tick bite? No.
No, I never actually saw the tick. I never had a rash. I went from being normal, and then I woke up about 15 minutes after I woke up. I could not function. My body became paralyzed. I had trouble speaking, and then I had severe head pressure. At Fire Island, they were actually going to helicopter me out of there because my body went downhill so fast. I ended up kind of coming to, and then I went off the island and went to the ER that night. But with testing and everything, no one could kind of figure out what was going on until many years later. And then I got
Yeah.
my positive diagnosis.
Your story is so, so familiar to so many out there. And not having that tick in your hand or seeing the tick bite or, being really conscientious of it, it leads to years and years of misdiagnoses. So I know everybody can relate to that. So tell me a little bit about once you received a diagnosis and then you started treatment, and how did you get to your journey now, which is helping thousands and thousands of people on their own journey and getting into the health practitioner field?
You know what's funny? Where I feel like kind of things have gone full circle. I was teaching fifth grade, and I was really becoming more and more debilitated. So I had to take a medical leave, and I was sitting at my computer, Googling my symptoms, of course, trying to figure out, like, I've been tested for so many things. I've gone to over 50 doctors. What is going on? Something's seriously wrong with me. And I came across this woman who had neurological Lyme disease and tested positive through a PCR test through a urine sample. And so I called her up and I was like, hey, your symptoms sound so much like mine. I've been tested for Lyme before, but like it keeps on coming up negative, and I can just really relate to everything that you've gone through. And she was like, you need to go to a Lyme specialist. You need to get these labs done from this laboratory. And so that's what I did. I contacted a Lyme specialist. We had the correct labs ordered, and I finally got my positive test. I went through treatment. I first did the antibiotic route, which can be very helpful for many. It was not the route for me. I kind of just crashed and burned with it. And then at that point, my health was going down so bad. I couldn't recognize my friends or family. I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror. Neurologically, I was just a complete disaster. Pretty much like crisis mode when my doctor recommended hyperthermia treatment. So I went over and I received hyperthermia treatment, which I can definitely go into more detail with. I came back. I continued with detoxing, cell membrane repair, looking into other recovery factors, heavy metal issues, mold mycotoxin issues, gut, diet, stuff like that. And I became very interested in the health field, decided to go back to school to get my master's in human nutrition, and also continue working with the hospitals that I went to for hyperthermia treatment, trying to create more awareness for hyperthermia as a successful treatment option, but also being really transparent that there's not a silver bullet treatment out there. Hyperthermia does a great job of lowering your pathogenic load, but there is work to do when you come back because tick-borne infections are really complicated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
So
complicated. And I would just definitely say that is true for any treatment. And and so we're going to get into hyperthermia in a second, but I'm just so glad that you did decide to pursue this journey because you are so relatable. You have such a great message to share, and we are so happy to have you part of this Lyme journey, although it's a stinky one to be in. But I believe in experts that have healed from Lyme, and that's what I gear the show towards. So let's talk about hyperthermia. Let's talk about the science behind it, because maybe you can help us understand what actually happens in the body when we receive this treatment. And then we'll talk about what it actually looks like for the person going in for treatment.
Sure. So hyperthermia is heating your body up and getting a fever to kill pathogens inside of you. There are a few different benefits of why people do hyperthermia treatment. One, it gets through biofilms. So when you have chronic Lyme, biofilms form around the spirochete. Antibiotics can't oftentimes get through biofilms to kill the infections, but hyperthermia can. So it breaks down these biofilms and it's able to kill more pathogens. it also gets high enough to kill a lot of infections. These hospitals are doing extreme whole body hyperthermia, so getting above 105 as close to 107 as possible. The higher you go, the more pathogens you kill. There are hospitals that are doing moderate hyperthermia, that's 104 and below. That is good for boosting your immune system, but it's not going to kill pathogens. There's 300 strains of Borrelia, probably more. And we're seeing that hyperthermia gets at a lot of those strains. Then there's also co-infections, Bartonella, Babesia, all of them. We're seeing that hyperthermia is effective for many of the co-infections like Bartonella. Babesia, it gets at some strains, but not all strains. So we like hyperthermia because it's getting high enough to kill a lot of pathogens. It's breaking through biofilms. It's boosting your immune system. And you can use antibiotics in conjunction with antibiotics. So hyperthermia in conjunction with antibiotics, and they're able to penetrate the spirochetes more efficiently at a lower dose. So it's less toxic for the body, but you're getting at it at a few different approaches. You can also use hyperthermia when you're treating people with cancer as well. So we work with people with cancer, with tick-borne infections, and then lately we also partnered up with a company in the US, they're located in Florida, and they work with a lot of people with movement disorders. So Parkinson's, ALS, MS. And the interesting thing is, I'm kind of trying to figure out, all right, why is hyperthermia so successful with these different types of neurodegenerative conditions? And when I test them, they are very similar to my Lyme clients. So they have very high tick-borne infections. They have high levels of mold mycotoxins. They often have high levels of heavy metals. So all of these pieces come together to create these pretty serious conditions. And at the end of it, a lot of illnesses are due to infection and inflammation and toxins. So when you get to the root of it and you look at specific tests, treatment wise, they can all be pretty relatable.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, so first of all, is this an FDA approved situation yet?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so, but you really need to, is it difficult to find an actual specialist that does hyperthermia, or no, not anymore? Because I know it once was.
So there are not a lot of places that do extreme whole body hyperthermia treatment. There are some places that in the States and outside of the country that do moderate hyperthermia, which again is helpful in boosting your immune system. And then I work with two hospitals in Germany, St. George Hospital and Dr. Herzog's Hospital, that do extreme whole body hyperthermia. I work with Sanoviv, which is in Rosarito, Mexico, and BTT Medical Institute, which is in Florida. They are doing hyperthermia getting above 105, and they're also using infrared heat to do it. That is the only way I'd recommend doing it. Other ways I feel like are dangerous, and I would not do it myself, and I would not recommend it for my clients. But using infrared heat is the safest way that I've seen to do this. You are bringing your body temperature up very, very slowly. You're being monitored the entire time. At most of these hospitals, you are sedated, so you're not awake during treatment. It's about a 4 or 5 hour procedure. It sounds a lot scarier than it is. It's actually a very safe procedure. I've done it myself. I've sent hundreds of people over there. I've also sat in while my clients have had it done for some of my clients. And I work with some of the sickest of the sickest people, and everyone's been able to tolerate it really well. So risk benefit compared to some other treatments in the Lyme community, I wish I had known about it a lot earlier, because it was the first treatment that I really responded to, and it was able to help me move forward and then be more receptive to detox therapies and antimicrobials and stuff like that, which my body really wasn't responding to anything prior.
Do you think that there's a correlation between when you attempted this in your Lyme disease journey? So in other words, do you think it would have worked as well, or you would have been able to tolerate it when you were in that beginning acute state, when you were being flown off of Fire Island, or when you were escaping Fire Island and going to, in the beginning of your journey, could you have tolerated it? Would it have worked so well? Or do you think possibly this is, what I consider the middle stage of Lyme disease, where you're kind of getting out of that hump, and your body's able to to withstand a little bit more?
Yeah. Okay. So what I think about that is if you are diagnosed immediately or pretty soon after you get bit, I think antibiotics can be a really great option if you are supporting your body with probiotics and different herbals and a good diet so that you can handle the die-off reaction and a lot of detoxing. And if you're consistent and persistent with it, some people will just do a few months of antibiotics and then some of it will go in remission. And then if something stressful comes out later in life, it'll pop out. So if I were to immediately get a diagnosis, I think antibiotics is a good option. However, I didn't immediately get a diagnosis. And when I did, I tried antibiotics and my body was not receptive to it. I wish I had tried hyperthermia prior to antibiotics because my body was receptive to it. I had so many biofilms at that point, so the antibiotics kind of just went in, messed up my gut, and I was on an antibiotic train. I'd feel okay when I was on it. I'd get off of it, and I'd have a really big relapse. So I felt like for me personally, that process kind of made me sicker. That's not the case for everybody, but that's how it was for me. And I wish I had known about hyperthermia prior because I feel like risk benefit. It has very low risk and had a lot of benefits. And it's kind of nice being in an inpatient facility where you're detoxing, you're getting your immune system strong, you're getting hyperthermia, and you can talk to other people that are going through this really misunderstood disease and getting support. So if I knew everything that I knew now, I would have done it as one of the initial treatments. I wish that it wasn't looked at so much as like a last resort treatment because Lyme disease is super serious. I think it's as serious as cancer. And so people are doing aggressive treatments when they get diagnosed with cancer, but Lyme can completely derail your system. And so to have a treatment that is going to significantly lower your pathogenic load in the beginning is important. So some people think of it as a more aggressive treatment. I don't think it's super aggressive. I think it's a very safe treatment and it should be looked into in the early stages as well. I just think there needs to be more awareness on it. And honestly, there should be more research studies. I'm a data person. I like to see research that backs everything up. And they have been doing a few research studies and they have more in Germany, but that's what Lyme needs. Lyme needs more research, more funding for research, and I'd love there to be more funding specifically for hyperthermia to really back up everything that I'm seeing when I work with people.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we do, why we do what we do. At least that's why I do what I do. So did you do the extreme whole body or did you do the moderate?
I did extreme whole body.
Okay.
They actually got me up to 107.5. You
For
really
how
can't
long?
go higher than that. So I want to say I was probably at 107.5 for like 20 minutes.
Okay.
They had me above 105 for a few hours. And the hyperthermia process itself during the cool down period and slowly going up was a 4.5, 5 hour procedure. I was sedated. So I just remember waking up in a room similar to an ICU room where you're being monitored, getting a lot of fluids. And I was exhausted. I felt like I had just run a marathon. But yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect. And it is nice that you're kind of under during it and that you're at a facility where they have so many detox therapies so that when you wake up and you are experiencing that die-off reaction or Herxheimer reaction, you are set up to get a lot of infusions, colonics, stuff to now get these dead pathogens, these toxins out of your system so the inflammation goes down and you can start feeling relief.
And how long did that take you to start feeling the first signs of relief?
So it took me a lot longer than many people. I spoke with a few people before I went and they came back and they were like, we felt great when we came back. We probably felt 70% better when we came back. And then we kept detoxing and continued to feel better. That was not my case at all. I was very debilitated before going. And so even if I killed all the pathogens, which hyperthermia, I don't think there's a cure out there. And I don't think hyperthermia kills every single pathogen, but say it did, there would still be a lot of work to do when I came back because of the toxins, the cell membrane damage, supporting the mitochondria, stuff like that. So I came back and I only felt a little bit better. I actually cried the first 2 weeks that I was home because I was in my early 20s. Neurologically, I still was a disaster. And I was thinking, how am I going to live the rest of my life with a brain that isn't working properly? every day I continued to detox. And so the more I detoxed, the better I would feel. So I would hold on to those little changes every day. And over a 3-month, 6-month time period, they became a lot more significant. So I had tried like glutathione IVs and vitamin C IVs prior to going for hyperthermia treatment, and I didn't notice any results. And all of this treatment is expensive. So I was kind of like, I'm spending a lot of money. Is this really doing anything? After hyperthermia treatment, I was dealing with a very low pathogenic load. And so when I would receive these treatments, I actually would respond to it and move forward. So that's what I held on to. I also had to look into heavy metal issues. I saw a biological dentist, had my amalgams removed. I did it, a certain way so that I didn't feel sick during the process. I was dealing with mold mycotoxins. My apartment at the time, while it was clean, I couldn't see any mold, and it smelled good. It had mold in between the walls, and it was getting me really sick. So I think that was also slowing down my recovery, because after I moved out of the apartment, my recovery was so much faster. So that was a big piece. Looking into getting these mold mycotoxins out was a big piece. I did something called the Patricia Keane protocol. It's infusions of phosphatidylcholine, phenylbutyrate, leucovorin, and glutathione. So they detox, repair your cell membranes, and support your mitochondria. That was huge in getting my brain back. Hyperthermia lowered my pathogenic load. The Patricia Keane protocol gave me my brain back, and helped heal me on a cellular level. And when you're dealing with a chronic illness, you want to heal your cells. I switched up my diet. I took different supplements to heal my gut. And that's when I really started feeling like myself again. But it was a process. It was not a silver bullet treatment for me. And yeah, there is work to do when you go home. But if you're consistent and persistent with it, then people are seeing results. And yeah, it helped me get my
I'm
life
sure
back.
you're still to this day doing preventative measures, and you've stuck to your lifestyle changes as well, because that's just what works long term.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Is this safe for children?
Yes, it is. So we have worked with many children. The youngest that I have worked with is 7 years old. Children actually respond great to treatments. I've had children that have gone, and then parents that have gone with them who the whole family has Lyme disease. And oftentimes, if the children are the sickest, they actually see results and bounce back a lot faster, even if they're a lot sicker than adults. So yeah, it's safe for children, and they bounce back really fast. So they definitely have their age for them regarding hyperthermia treatment.
Yeah. I've known some people that have gone through it and they were not sedated. So this is new information for me, that you can choose to be sedated, I suppose, because it wasn't comfortable for them for that time period, especially when it gets way up there. But
Yeah.
I definitely believe in these healing properties. Do you want to give a shout out to the center where you received the treatment, or the doctor that helped you along the way, or
Yeah. So I received treatment at the St. George Hospital. They are in Germany, in Bad Aibling. You fly into Munich, and we have a shuttle come pick you up, take you to St. George. They have been doing it the longest. I feel like they are the most aggressive. Dr. Dowies is the main doctor at St. George Hospital. And so he's kind of pioneered Lyme and hyperthermia. He had a few patients that had breast cancer who also had Lyme disease. And so they received the hyperthermia for their breast cancer, and they noticed that a lot of their Lyme symptoms had dissipated. They started doing more research, and they opened it up to people with Lyme disease as well. I love that at St. George, hyperthermia, your head is in the machine. You're going to very high temperatures, and they're doing it with infrared heat, and you're at an inpatient facility where they are doing a lot of detox. They also offer additional programs, like a 3rd week with plasmapheresis, a 4th week with co-infection treatment, and a 5th week with a gut reset program. So they're trying to really understand all of these other factors that the people are dealing with when they're dealing with tick-borne infections.
It's so fascinating, truly. Is there this is a naive question, but we all sort of experiment with our infrared saunas. Is this what you would consider moderate, or no, not similar at all?
Okay, so for moderate hyperthermia, you're getting your body temperature around 104 degrees. For extreme whole body hyperthermia, you're getting your body temperature to above 105, close to 107. When you do infrared saunas, the temperature around you can be like 150 degrees, but that's not your body temperature. So what these saunas are great for is helping boost your immune system, and then also helping you sweat out toxins. Detoxing is a huge player in the recovery process. So anything you can do to sweat out and get out these toxins is going to be key. I usually have my clients take certain binders before they do a sauna. They'll do the sauna, they'll come out. I have them take liquid minerals and electrolytes to replenish anything that was sweat out. But yeah, I think saunas are great in boosting your immune system and sweating out toxins. Saunas will not get high enough to kill pathogens, but they are helpful in regard to maintenance treatments.
Got it. So they're great for detoxing,
Exactly.
as opposed to, I didn't know if it was similar, but just sort of a gentler version of this. I think the idea is that you know, our bodies heal themselves by reaching a fever type
Hmm.
state. And so isn't the idea that if through hyperthermia, you're actually you're inducing this fever state and then maintaining it for a long period of time so that your body has a chance to actually heal itself. You're not actually even injecting anything into the body. You're just
Exactly.
you're forcing your body to fight it off a little stronger.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Great. Okay. I think we've covered it all. I want to talk about, the impacts of biotoxins and those illnesses. Maybe we can talk a little bit about mold test treatment and testing.
Hmm.
Sorry. And what you see with your Lyme patients. How common is it to have all of this going on at once?
Yeah, so mold is a massive issue in the Lyme community. And I am noticing that when people relapse, 9 times out of 10, it is due to bad mold exposure.
Okay.
I'd come back from Germany. I had been doing really well for 8 years. And then I had a really, really serious mold exposure, and I've had some pretty bad ones since. And that definitely flared up symptoms from me. And that's where I was like, okay, this is like crazy. I've had like very serious stress. I've been in car accidents. Nothing has made me flare up like this. What is going on? So I took a bunch of courses on mold, and then I started looking into it more with my clients. And really, during this time period is when COVID kind of first happened. So people were in their homes, staying in their homes more. And I started seeing that a lot of my clients that were doing well, about a year after like COVID just started, many of them were not doing well anymore. And so they hadn't been bit by a tick again. And so I was like, what could it be? What could have caused this relapse? And it was 9 times out of 10 mold, because they were staying in their homes more often. They weren't like going out, doing their regular activities, going to the gym, detoxing, stuff like that, because they couldn't. And so I started kind of seeing it all kind of blew up during COVID, that it was a big issue. And it was a whole issue for the Lyme community. So there are a lot of things to do to help you move forward, but making sure that your home is conducive to healing is one of the biggest pieces. I see that if we can get that piece under control, a lot of times the Lyme will go in remission. So yeah, I help with treatment and testing. In regard to testing, you can test your home. A lot of inspectors don't do testing properly. So they'll come in and they'll do air sampling testing. Air sampling is really inaccurate. You want to do DNA PCR testing. So doing an ERMI test, a Big2, a Cat15, something where you're getting DNA samples of dust and looking into the mold spores, the level of mold spores in the home, and the types and how toxic they are. Then we test people's bodies. We can do mold mycotoxin testing, which is helpful, but not 100% accurate. The pros and cons to mold mycotoxin testing is, one, I have my clients do a provoke test. So either a sauna or a glutathione IV, so that these toxins are able to get out of their body more efficiently and the results are more accurate. However, what I do see is that when people are very toxic and their drainage pathways are not open, the levels are pretty low. And that's not as accurate as how toxic they really are and how much mold is in mold mycotoxins are in their system. So once we open up their drainage pathways and we detox them more, we test again, and usually they're higher. So these tests give us an idea of what's going on. And when we test the home, the mold spores in the home and the mycotoxins in the body, they align with the type of like mold spores that create these specific mycotoxins. So I use that for testing. I also have my clients do a VCS test. Dr. Shoemaker is a pioneer in the mold world. And he has a test right on his website. It's like $10, really easy to do. And it allows you to kind of figure out your exposure. Most of my clients fail this test, but I have them do this test every 3 months, and we see that they're moving in the right direction.
Oh.
There's also testing called CIRS biomarkers, so chronic inflammatory response biomarkers that checks inflammatory levels and different hormones that are affected specifically from mold mycotoxins. These tests are super helpful. If I'm trying to decide, is my client's issue more of a Lyme pathogenic issue, or is it more of like a toxic mold issue? I do something called a C4A test. And if the levels are super high, that allows me to understand that it's more of a mold rather than a pathogenic issue that's causing all of this inflammation. So I use that test. I also use the OAT test, organic acid testing. It looks into oxalates and fungal levels and stuff like that. I do GI map testing to also see fungal levels and what's going on, any opportunistic infections. So having this information gets me a better picture of what is going on inside their body. And because all this stuff is super expensive, whether you do remediation or you move, stuff like that, like it's really big decisions. And it's tricky because people in the Lyme community don't respond to mold well. People with this gene called the HLA-DR gene also are very affected by mold, but the regular population oftentimes can feel okay if the mold isn't super toxic. So we're working with people where some people in the home are completely fine and they're like, I don't want to move and get rid of my stuff. Like, this is crazy. And then other people that have the gene and have Lyme disease, their body is completely shutting down and it's really serious. So having all of this information is helpful in making decisions on what to do moving forward.
It's a tough one, that mold. And I always, if people keep relapsing, they don't understand it. They may not see black mold in the house. They may have new construction. Actually, I just recently went to a brand new, spanking new hotel, and I thought, okay, I'll be safe there. I walked in my room and I could immediately smell just mold or mildew or something like that. It was in a brand new, expensive hotel down in Mexico. And I was just like, oh, and I felt bad that I had to change my room like 3 times because I couldn't shake it. It was just in those bottom level rooms. But one of my worst relapses in 10 years was when I went to Paris and ended up staying in an apartment that had been shuttered up. So we went in there and I was there for like 5 nights or something. And I knew I had suspicions, but it was a circumstance where I was staying there and that's the way it was. And so I helped, sort of clean up the situation, get it all sparkly and all that. And it was probably 2 weeks later, I came home. I came home and then 2 weeks later, I could not move from my bed. I couldn't even get in my car and go down the block to take my kid to the bus stop. It was really brutal, and it lasted like the better part of 5 months. And I just had to treat it with, all of the things that you just mentioned. And it was a real beast to tackle, but I hadn't had a flare like that in a long time. And so I knew exactly what it was and where it came from. So all of this is so important. And it's so important that everybody out there, if you don't have an LLMD or somebody that's super in tune with the Lyme community and how Lyme and mold work together and how to test for all of this, you're barking up the wrong tree. You just need to go ahead and let go of that relationship and stop trying to convince them that you're sick, and really seek out some great medical advice with people that are educated in this area. And it sounds like you really are. And I love talking to you. I wanted to know, can you tell everybody about your 2 books that you have already authored?
Yeah, so we've created ebooks. One is a whole ebook on tick-borne infections and how hyperthermia is an effective treatment for people battling tick-borne infections. And then also it goes into pre and post treatment, how we help look into these other recovery factors like mold, heavy metals, gut issues, limbic system regulation. And same with cancer, how hyperthermia can be an effective treatment for people with cancer. And then other things to look into to really support your system, support your diet, build up your immune system so that you can move forward and put things in remission.
I hope that someday that's treatment is more affordable for people out there.
I do too.
I think that's the biggest frustration with hyperthermia. I know there's a huge price tag that comes along with it. Apparently you just do it for the one session, correct? You don't have to keep repeating it.
So with the hospitals that I work with, the ones outside the States, they do 2 hyperthermia treatments during their program. The one in the States, they do 1, and then sometimes people need a second one. Most of my clients have not had to go back for hyperthermia again. However, there have been some clients that have had bad relapses due to mold and did end up going for a second time. So yeah, for some people, it may be worth doing it a second time. That second time, if you do 1 treatment, it's actually so much more affordable. What I also say to my clients is ask for an itemized bill before you leave, because my clients are resubmitting it to their insurance companies, and they're actually, most of them are getting a significant amount back. You do need to have that down payment up front, but it's worth looking into submitting it, because I am very surprised with how much people are getting back, especially because insurance doesn't cover a lot of things with Lyme, but it is getting people reimbursed. It's not a guarantee. It doesn't happen every time, but it's happening more often than not. So it's just something to think about.
I wonder why it is so expensive. Is it just the machine that they use?
Well, I've looked at the hospitals that I work with, I've looked at the itemized bill. So I see like what they're spending on different infusions, what it takes for hyperthermia treatment. And so when I break it down, the prices actually make sense for this program. If you were to go back and do hyperthermia treatment, I want to say it's at some of these hospitals, it's 6,000, around 6,000 for an additional one, which is still a lot of money, but it does help you really lower your pathogenic load to move forward. And then if you can get some of it reimbursed when you come back, it may be worth looking into. Absolutely.
So before we get into your final thoughts, I want to let everybody know where they can contact you. Michelle McKeon, which is spelled McKeon. The website is thelymespecialist.com. She's on Instagram at the Lyme Specialist. She can receive emails at michelle@thelymespecialist.com. And her telephone number, I guess people can just call you right on up, is 718-673-6338. And so, Michelle, your final thoughts for all the warriors out there listening and suffering because of Lyme disease.
I just want to say, keep fighting. You do need to be your own advocate. No one is going to do this for you. So really listen to yourself and listen to your body. There are a lot of really good treatments out there, but it's really important to do it in the right order, and so that your body's going to be receptive to it. It's kind of like a dance with your body, and everyone is so individualized, but the Lyme community is a very supportive community. We want to help. It is a complete nightmare going through this disease, and especially when people don't understand, so it can feel incredibly lonely. But there are good treatments and there is hope in getting better. It's about asking the right questions, being persistent, and really listening to your body.
Thank you so much. You have enlightened me. I know you've enlightened so many people out there just by making it the information so obtainable, and it really gives me a lot of hope for a lot of people. And this has always been a mysterious treatment. I feel as though because not a lot of people do it, not a lot of people and doctors actually perform this. You have to go through a lot of different hoops to get to actually treatment, but I'm just so glad to have the information. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll see us again soon, and everybody please go follow Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye guys.